Jake Morrison pressed his back against the cold metal wall as another explosion shook Kepler station. Red warning lights flashed everywhere, and the sound of twisting metal filled the air. He could hear his squad members breathing hard through their helmet radios. "Contact on level 3, shouted Private Danny Kim through the communication system. They're breaking through the east wall. Jake checked his pulse rifle and looked at the 5 soldiers with him. They had been fighting the Zephyrian Empire for 3 years now. The alien invaders showed no mercy to human colonies. Today they had come for Kepler Station, humanity's most important research base on the edge of known space. "Stay together," Jake told his team. "We hold this section, no matter what." The station shook again as enemy ships fired their weapons at the outer hull. Through the thick windows, Jake could see the dark shapes of Zephyrian warships. Their ships looked like giant metal spears with glowing green engines. Each one was twice the size of human vessels. Sergeant Pete Collins crouched next to a broken computer terminal. "Sir, they've taken the main docking bay. We're cut off from the escape pods." Jake felt his stomach drop. Without the escape pods, everyone on the station would die when the Zephyrians broke through. He had seen what happened to human prisoners. The aliens never took anyone alive. "Then we make our stand here," Jake said. He tried to sound calm for his men, but inside he was scared. They all were. The lights went out suddenly. Emergency power kicked in a few seconds later, bathing everything in dim red light. Jake's helmet display showed that life support was failing in several sections of the station. "Movement in Corridor 7, whispered Corporal Amy Chen. She was their best sniper and rarely missed her targets. "Something big is coming our way." Jake moved to the corner and carefully looked around it. The long hallway stretched ahead of them, filled with smoke and floating debris. At the far end, he could see the green glow of Zephyrian plasma weapons. The enemy soldiers appeared like shadows in the smoke. They were tall and moved onto legs like humans, but their skin looked like dark green leather. Sharp teeth filled their mouths, and their eyes glowed yellow in the darkness. Each one carried weapons that could burn through human armor in seconds. "Wait for my signal," Jake whispered to his team. The Zephyrians moved closer. Jake counted 6 of them. His squad had good positions behind overturned tables and broken wall panels. They might have a chance if they struck first. Jake was about to give the order to fire when he heard something that made him freeze. It was a soft crying sound, like a small child. The sound came from somewhere behind the advancing aliens. He looked harder and saw movement in the wreckage of what used to be the docking bay. A piece of twisted metal shifted, and Jake caught sight of something that shocked him. It was small and green, huddled in a corner where debris had fallen. It was a Zephyrian child. Jake had never seen one before. The alien was tiny, maybe the size of a 6-year-old human. It had the same green skin as the adult soldiers, but its features were softer. Large golden eyes looked around in terror as the sounds of battle grew louder. The child must have been on one of the enemy ships that crashed into the station. Jake realized the adult Zephyrians probably did not know the little one was there. They were focused on their attack and moving away from where the child was hiding. "Sir, what are your orders?" Pete asked quietly. Jake stared at the small alien. It was just a kid. A scared, lost kid whose parents were probably dead. The logical thing to do was ignore it and focus on the enemy soldiers. This was war. The Zephyrians had killed thousands of humans. They deserved no mercy. But looking at the frightened child, Jake could not bring himself to turn away. He thought about his own nephew back on Earth. Little Bobby was about the same size as this alien child. What would happen to Bobby if he was alone and scared in a war zone? "Sir," Pete asked again. The Zephyrian soldiers were getting closer. In a few seconds, they would be in position to attack Jake's squad. This was the moment to strike first and gain the advantage. Instead, Jake made a decision that went against everything he had been trained to do. "Hold your fire," he whispered. "What?" Amy sounded confused. "Sir, they're right there." Jake repeated. He took a deep breath and stepped out from behind cover. Jake ran toward the wreckage where the child was hiding. His boots pounded on the metal floor. Behind him, he heard Pete shouting his name. The Zephyrian soldiers saw him immediately and raised their weapons. Green plasma bolts lit up the hallway. Jake dove and rolled, barely avoiding the deadly energy beams. One shot passed so close to his head that he could feel the heat through his helmet. The child saw him coming and pressed itself deeper into the corner. Its golden eyes were wide with fear. Jake could see it was shaking. "It's okay," Jake said, even though he knew the alien could not understand him. He held up his hands to show he was not holding a weapon. More plasma shots filled the air around them. The Zephyrian soldiers were moving closer, firing as they advanced. Jake realized they could not see their own child in the shadows and debris. Without thinking, Jake threw himself over the small alien, covered the child's body with his own, just as the enemy soldiers opened fire at their position. The first plasma bolt hit Jake in the back. Pain exploded through his body as the energy burned through his armor and into his flesh. He gritted his teeth and held still. The child beneath him made a small sound of surprise. A second shot hit his left shoulder, and a third struck his leg. Each impact felt like being hit with a white-hot hammer. Jake's armor was melting where the plasma touched it, and the smell of burning metal and flesh filled his nose, but he did not move. The child looked up at him with those large golden eyes. Jake could see confusion there, and something else. The little alien seemed to understand that this human was protecting it. The shooting stopped. Jake heard the Zephyrian soldiers talking to each other in their harsh language. Their voices sounded shocked and uncertain. Through the pain, Jake kept his eyes on the child. "It's okay," he whispered again. His voice was weak now. He could feel blood running down his back where the plasma had burned him. The alien soldiers came closer. Jake could hear their heavy footsteps on the metal floor. He waited for them to finish him off. Instead, one of them said something that sounded like a question. Another replied in what seemed like an argument. After a few moments, the footsteps moved away. Jake did not understand why they had left him alive. Maybe seeing a human protect one of their children had confused them. Maybe they could not bring themselves to kill someone who had shown mercy. To their young, his vision was getting blurry. The burns from the plasma weapons were worse than anything he had ever felt. But the child was safe beneath him, unharmed. Jake. He heard Lisa Carter's voice calling his name. She was the station's medical officer. Oh my God, what happened here? Jake tried to answer but found he could not speak. The world was spinning around him. The last thing he saw before losing consciousness was the alien child's golden eyes, looking at him with something that might have been gratitude. Jake woke up to the sound of machines beeping around him. The medical bay was quiet except for the soft hum of life support systems. His whole body felt like it was on fire. Every time he tried to move, sharp pain shot through his back and shoulder. Don't. Try to sit up, said Lisa Carter. She was checking the monitors next to his bed. You have second and third degree burns from those plasma hits. It's going to take time to heal. Jake turned his head slowly and saw the alien child sitting in a chair next to his bed. The little Zephyrian had not left his side since the battle 3 days ago. Its golden eyes watched every movement Jake made. Why is it still here? Jake asked. His voice was rough and dry. We tried to move the child to a holding cell, Lisa said. But every time we separated you two, it would make these awful crying sounds. The kid refused to eat or drink anything. Dr. Martinez thinks it might be some kind of bonding behavior. Jake looked at the small alien again. It was wearing human clothes now, a simple gray jumpsuit that was too big for its tiny frame. Someone had cleaned the dirt and blood from its green skin. Up close, Jake could see that the child's features were actually quite delicate. If not for the green skin and yellow eyes, it could almost pass for a human child. We figured out how to talk to it, Jake asked. Ryan Bell has been working on that, Lisa said. He's our communications officer. Been trying to set up some kind of translation system. Da? So far he's learned that the child's name sounds like Keth when we say it in English. As if hearing its name, the alien child looked up at Jake and made a soft sound. Then it pointed at Jake and said something in its own language. What did it say? Jake asked. You think it might be trying to say your name? Lisa said. It's been making that same sound every time someone mentions you. Jake tried to sit up again, ignoring the pain. Keth immediately stood up and came closer to the bed. The child reached out carefully and touched Jake's hand with its small green fingers. Skin contact sent a strange tingling sensation up Jake's arm. It was not unpleasant, just different. Keth seemed to relax when it touched him, and Jake noticed that some of his own pain faded slightly. "That's interesting," Lisa said, watching her medical instruments. "Your vital signs improve whenever the child makes physical contact. Heart rate slows down, stress hormones decrease. There might be some kind of biological compatibility between your species." Over the next few days, Jake spent more time awake. Keth stayed close to him, sometimes sitting in the chair, sometimes curled up on a small mat on the floor. The child seemed fascinated by everything in the medical bay. It would watch Lisa work with the medical equipment, its head tilting to one side like a curious puppy. Ryan Bell visited often to work on communication. He was a tall, thin man with thick glasses who spoke several human languages. Learning to talk with an alien was the challenge of his lifetime. "I've made some progress," Ryan told Jake during one visit. "Keth's language uses a lot of clicking sounds and changes in tone, but I think I've figured out some basic words." Ryan sat down near Keth and spoke slowly in the alien language. He pointed at Jake and made a series of clicking sounds. Keth's eyes lit up, and it responded with what sounded like excitement. "What did you say?" Jake asked. "I asked if you were its friend," Ryan said, grinning, and Keth said yes. Well, the closest translation would be protector or shield giver there. Doesn't seem to be a direct word for friend in their language. Jake felt something warm in his chest. Despite everything that had happened, despite the war between their species, this child saw him as a protector. "Can you ask where its parents are?" Jake said. Ryan's smile faded. He spoke to Keth again, using gentler tones. The child's response was much quieter, and its golden eyes became sad. "Gone," Ryan translated. "Keth says they went to the bright place. I think that means they died in the battle." Jake reached out and touched Keth's shoulder. The child leaned into the contact, seeking comfort. Jake realized that this little alien was completely alone in the universe. Just like many human children who had lost their families in the war, Station Commander Helen Price came to visit on Jake's 5th day in the medical bay. She was a stern woman in her 50s who had fought in the early battles against the Zephyrians. Her face showed the stress of commanding a damaged station in enemy territory. "Lieutenant Commander Morrison," she said formally, "I need to discuss the situation with our prisoner." Jake glanced at Keth, who was playing with a simple puzzle that Lisa had given him. "It's just a child, Commander. It's a Zephyrian," Helen said firmly. "The same species that has been trying to wipe out humanity for 3 years. The same species that killed half my crew last week. This one didn't kill anyone," Jake said. "It's probably never even seen a weapon before." "That's not the point," Helen said. "Earth Command wants to know what we plan to do with it. Some people think we should use the child as a bargaining chip. Others want to study it to learn more about Zephyrian biology." Jake felt anger rising in his chest despite his injuries. "You're talking about experimenting on a kid?" "I'm talking about survival," Helen said. "This war has cost us millions of lives. Studying this alien helps us end the conflict sooner. Isn't that worth considering?" Keth looked up from its puzzle, sensing the tension in the room. The child moved closer to Jake's bed and took his hand. The touch calmed Jake's anger, but his determination remained strong. "No," Jake said quietly. "We're better than that. If we start experimenting on children, how are we any different from them?" Helen studied Jake's face for a long moment. "The child seems attached to you. And Dr. Carter says your recovery is going faster than expected when it's around. Maybe that's worth something too." She turned to leave, then paused at the door. "Earth Command is sending a team to evaluate the situation. They'll be here in 2 weeks. Figure out what you want to tell them about your new friend." After she left, Jake looked down at Keth. The child was still holding his hand, those golden eyes looking up at him with complete trust. "We need to learn more about each other," Jake said, even though he knew Keth could not understand most of his words. Over the following days, Jake and Keth developed their own simple communication system. Jake would point at objects and say their names in English. Keth would repeat the words, though its pronunciation was often strange due to the differences in their vocal cords. "Water," Jake would say, holding up a glass. "Water," Keth would repeat. the clicking sounds of its language mixing with the human word. "Friend," Jake said, pointing at himself. Keth tilted its head, thinking. Then it made a complex series of clicks and pointed back at Jake. Ryan later told them it meant the one who shields others from harm. Jake taught Keth simple English words, while the child taught him basic Zephyrian phrases. They learned that Zephyrians had different words for different types of family relationships. Keth had 17 different ways to say parent, depending on the context. The most surprising thing Jake learned was that Zephyrian children were taught to value life above all else. In their culture, protecting the young was the highest honor anyone could achieve. This explained why the Zephyrian soldiers had stopped shooting when they saw Jake shielding Keith. "Your species and ours might not be so different," Jake told Keth. One evening, as the child fell asleep on the mat beside his bed, Keth mumbled something in its own language before closing its eyes. Ryan had taught Jake enough to understand it. The child had said, "Good dreams, Shield Giver." Jake watched the small alien sleep and wondered what Earth Command would decide to do. Whatever happened, he knew his life had changed forever the moment he chose to protect this child. He had seen something in those golden eyes that gave him hope. The same capacity for trust and love that existed in human children. Maybe that was enough to build a bridge between two species that had forgotten how to see each other as anything but enemies. High Matriarch Zara Veltic stood on the bridge of her flagship, staring out at the stars. 3 weeks had passed since the battle at Kepler Station, and still no word about her child. The massive warship Sovereign's blade hung in space like a metal predator, its weapons pointed at nothing but emptiness. "Any news from the search teams?" Zara asked without turning around. General Vex Mordock approached carefully. He had served under Zara for 10 years and knew her moods. Right now, she was like a wounded animal, dangerous to everyone around her. "Negative, Matriarch," Dex said. "We have searched the debris field around Kepler Station 3 times. No sign of the transport ship that carried your offspring." Zara's hands tightened into fists. In Zephyrian culture, children were the most precious things in existence. Losing Keth felt like having her heart torn from her chest. She had been preparing for an important meeting with the War Council when the attack began, her child was supposed. To be safe on the transport, far from the fighting, search again, Zara ordered. "Matriarch, we have duties to the Empire," Vex said carefully. "The War Council expects us to continue the assault on human colonies. We cannot spend forever looking." "For one child?" Zara spun around, her yellow eyes blazing with fury. "That child is my offspring. In our culture, family comes before everything else. Have you forgotten our ways, General?" Vex stepped back. "Of course not, Matriarch. But the humans are spreading. Across our territory, every day we delay gives them more time to build defenses. The humans can wait," Zara said coldly. "Find my child." For days, Zephyrian search ships combed through every piece of wreckage they could find. They checked escape pods, examined blast patterns, and questioned every survivor from the battle. Most of the evidence pointed to one terrible conclusion. Keth's transport had crashed into the human station and been destroyed. But Zara refused to accept that her child was dead. Not without proof. "Bring me the soldiers who returned from the station," she commanded. 6 Zephyrian warriors stood before her in the ship's main hall. They were the survivors of the boarding party that had fought inside Kepler Station. Each one bore scars from the battle, and their eyes showed the weariness of soldiers who had seen too much death. "Tell me everything that happened," Zara said. The squad leader, a veteran named Crix Thorin, stepped forward. "We breached the outer hull and fought our way to the main corridors. The humans resisted fiercely. We're advancing toward their command center when we encountered something unexpected." "What kind of unexpected?" Zara asked. Crix looked uncomfortable. "A human soldier, Matriarch. He was protecting something in the wreckage near the docking bay." "Protecting what?" "Small form, green skin." We could not see clearly through the smoke and debris, but it appeared to be one of our young. Zara felt her heart skip a beat. "You saw a Zephyrian child?" "We believe so, Matriarch." "Oh, the human threw himself over the small one when we opened fire. He took multiple plasma hits, but did not move away. A human protected one of our children." Zara could not hide her disbelief. That makes no sense. Humans are savage creatures. They show no mercy to our kind. That is what we always believed, Crick said. But this one was different. He shielded the young one with his own body. We were so shocked by this action that we stopped firing and withdrew. Another soldier spoke up. The human was badly wounded, matriarch. We thought he would die from his injuries. We did not know what to do. Zara paced back and forth, her mind racing. Everything she had been taught about humans said they were heartless killers who cared only for conquest. They had destroyed Zephyrian colonies without mercy. They had never shown kindness to prisoners. Yet here was a report of a human risking his life to save a Zephyrian child. Could the child have been my offspring? Zara asked quietly. It is possible, matriarch. The size and age seemed correct, but we could not confirm the identity. Zara closed her eyes and tried to think. If Keth was alive and in human hands, what would they do? Would they torture the child for information? Would they use Keth as a weapon against the Zephyrian Empire? But if this human soldier had protected her child, maybe not all humans were monsters. I want to know everything about this human, Zara ordered. Find out who he is. Learn about his background, his family, his motivations. I want to understand why he would save one of our young. General Dex frowned. Matriarch. Studying humans is not a priority for our military. We have other concerns. Make it a priority, Zara snapped. If my child is alive, I need to understand the creatures who hold him. Over the next week, Zephyrian intelligence officers worked day and night to gather information about humans. They intercepted communications, studied captured equipment, and analyzed human behavior patterns from previous battles. What they found surprised everyone. Humans appear to have something called empathy, reported Intelligence Chief Vex Kepler. They can feel emotional connections to creatures that are not their own species. That sounds like weakness, Vex said. Perhaps Vex continued. But it also explains behaviors we have observed. Humans sometimes risk their lives to save animals. They care for creatures that serve no practical purpose, even show kindness to their enemies in certain situations. Zara listened carefully. In Zephyrian culture, loyalty was everything, but it was usually limited to family and clan members. The idea of caring for complete strangers was foreign to her people. There is more, matriarch, Vex said. We intercepted some human communications. From Kepler Station, they mention a human soldier named Jake Morrison who was injured protecting an alien child. The child appears to be alive and staying close to this Morrison. Zara's hearts began beating faster. Zephyrians had 2 hearts, and both were pounding now. My offspring is alive. We believe so, matriarch. The communications suggest the child has formed some kind of bond with the human soldier. They are learning to communicate with each other? A bond? Zara was confused. How is that possible between our species? We do not fully understand it, Vex admitted. But human research suggests they have something called mirror neurons that allow them to connect emotionally with other creatures. Combined with their empathy, this might create bonds that cross species lines. Zara had trouble accepting this information. For 3 years, she had seen humans as nothing but destroyers. They had killed her people and taken Zephyrian worlds. How could the same species that waged war so brutally also show such kindness to a child? Show me the intercepted communications, she demanded. The recordings were fragmentary, but clear enough. Human voices discussing medical treatment for someone called Jake Morrison. Mentions of an alien child who would not eat unless Morrison was nearby. References to teaching the child English words. One recording made Zara's chest tighten with emotion. It was a human doctor saying the kid really cares about Jake. I've never seen anything like it. It's like they understand each other on some deeper level. It could be my Keth, Zara whispered. General Dex stepped closer. Matriarch, even if your child is alive, retrieving him from human space would be extremely dangerous. Kepler Station is heavily defended now. We would lose many ships in an assault. Then we do not assault, Zara said slowly. We try something else. What do you mean? Zara turned to face her officers. If this human truly saved my child, then I owe him a debt. In our culture, Protecting someone's offspring creates a bond of honor. This Morrison has earned the right to be heard. You want to talk to the humans? Dex sounded shocked. Matriarch, we have been at war for 3 years. They will never trust us. Perhaps not, Zara said, but I must try. If my child has formed a bond with this human, then there might be something worth learning from their species. She walked to the large view screen that showed the starfield ahead. Somewhere out there, her child was alive and safe, because a human soldier had chosen compassion over hatred. Prepare a message for the human commanders, Zara ordered. Tell them that High Matriarch Zara Velthic wishes to discuss the return of her offspring. Tell them I come not as a conqueror, but as a mother, and if they refuse... Vex asked. Zara touched the meditation stone she wore around her neck, a gift from Keth before the battle. Then I will do whatever it takes to get my child back. But first, I want to meet this Jake Morrison, who shielded my offspring with his own body. I want to understand what kind of creature would show such honor to an enemy. The bridge fell silent. As her officers processed this unprecedented decision, never before in the war had a high-ranking Zephyrian requested peaceful contact with humans. But then again, never before had a human soldier risked his life to save a Zephyrian child. Admiral Susan Cole stared at the message on her screen for the 10th time in an hour. The words seemed impossible, but the alien transmission was clear and had been verified by 3 different translation programs. High Matriarch Zara Velthic of the Zephyrian Empire requests peaceful dialogue regarding the return of her offspring currently in human custody. No hostile intentions. Seeking diplomatic contact. This has to be a trap, said Colonel Ben Wright, leaning over her shoulder. The Zephyrians have never asked for peace talks. They just attack. Susan rubbed her tired eyes. She had been fighting this war for 3 years, and every encounter with the aliens had been violent. Now suddenly, their most powerful leader wanted to talk, maybe, Susan said. But what if it's real? What if that child on Kepler station really is her offspring? The communication had arrived at Earth Defense Command 6 hours ago. Since then, Susan's office had been filled with military officials, politicians, and intelligence experts all arguing about how to respond. We should ignore it, said General Marcus Stone. Or better yet, tell them we'll trade the child for a complete withdrawal from human space. That won't work, Susan said. If this matriarch is truly the child's mother, she won't abandon her people just for one offspring. We need to be smarter about this. Secretary of Defense Linda Hayes entered the room carrying a tablet full of reports. I've been reading everything we know about Zephyrian culture. Family bonds are extremely important to them. If we harm that child in any way, this matriarch will never stop hunting us. What do you suggest? Susan asked. We take the meeting. Linda said, but we do it carefully, with maximum security. If it's a trap, we'll be ready. If it's real, we might learn something useful. Susan thought about Jake Morrison and the alien child who had bonded with him. The reports from Kepler Station were strange, but consistent. The little alien refused to leave Jake's side and seemed to be learning human language rapidly. Contact Kepler Station, Susan ordered. I want to talk to Lieutenant Commander Morrison. An hour later, Jake's face appeared on the communication screen. He looked much better than he had weeks ago, though Susan could see scars on his neck from the plasma burns. Behind him, she caught a glimpse of green skin and golden eyes. Admiral Cole, Jake said formally, I understand you have questions about the situation here. That's putting it mildly, Susan said. We've received a request for peace talks from someone claiming to be that child's mother. A high matriarch, which our intelligence says is equivalent to an empress. Jake glanced over his shoulder. Keth, come here. The alien child moved into view of the camera. It was smaller than Susan had expected, barely reaching Jake's waist. The child looked directly at the screen with those strange golden eyes. Can it understand what we're saying? Susan asked. Some of it, Jake said. Keth has learned quite a bit of English. Keth, can you tell the Admiral your mother's name? The child spoke in its clicking language. But Susan heard something that sounded like Zara Velthic, mixed in with the alien words. That's a match, Susan said grimly. We're dealing with the real thing. Jake put his hand on Keth's shoulder, and the child leaned against him trustingly. Admiral, I need you to understand something. This isn't just a prisoner or a bargaining chip. Keth is a child who lost everything in that battle. If we use that against this matriarch, we're no better than the worst things we've accused them of. I understand your feelings, Morrison, Susan said. Oh. But we have to think about the bigger picture. This war has cost millions of lives. Maybe this is how we end it, Jake said quietly. Maybe showing them we can be better than they expected is worth more than any military victory. Susan ended the communication and turned to her advisors. Opinions? Morrison's right about one thing, Linda said. How we handle this will define who we are as a species. The whole galaxy will be watching. Whole galaxy will be laughing if we get blown up in a fake peace meeting, Colonel Wright muttered. Take precautions, Susan decided. Maximum security, neutral location, limited. Contact, but we take the meeting. 2 days later, Zara's flagship appeared at the edge of the Kepler system. The massive ship held position exactly where she had promised, making no aggressive moves. Human scouts confirmed that she had come alone, without the fleet that usually accompanied high-ranking Zephyrians. She's actually here, breathed Captain Tony Martinez from the bridge of the human cruiser Independence. Never thought I'd see the day. The meeting was arranged to take place aboard a small transport vessel in empty space between the two fleets. Both sides would send minimal personnel, just enough for basic communication and security. Jake had volunteered to be part of the human delegation, despite his recent injuries. Keth trusts me, he had argued. If this goes wrong, I'm probably the only one who can keep the child calm. Now he sat in the transport's main cabin, Keth beside him on the bench. The child was nervous, making small clicking sounds and gripping Jake's hand tightly. It's going to be okay, Jake said softly. Your mother is coming to see you. Keth looked up at him with those golden eyes and said something in Zephyrian that Jake was beginning to understand. The child was afraid that its mother would be angry about forming a bond with a human. She won't be angry, Jake said, hoping he was right. Mothers just want their children to be safe. The airlock hissed open and 3 Zephyrian figures entered. The cabin. The first was clearly a soldier, tall and heavily armored with visible weapons. The second appeared to be some kind of advisor or aide. The third was Zara Veltic herself. Jake had never seen a Zephyrian female before. Zara was slightly smaller than the male soldiers he had fought, but there was something powerful about her presence. Her green skin had subtle patterns that marked her as nobility, and her golden eyes held an intelligence that reminded him of Keth. Those eyes found her child immediately. Keth, Zara whispered in her own language. The little alien let go of Jake's hand and took a hesitant step forward. Then suddenly it was running, crossing the small space between them in seconds. Zara dropped to her knees and caught her child in her arms, holding Keth close and making soft sounds that Jake recognized. As Zephyrian expressions of relief and love, Jake watched the reunion and felt something warm in his chest. Whatever else happened today, a mother had been reunited with her child. After a long moment, Zara looked up at Jake. Her golden eyes studied his face carefully, taking in the scars from the plasma burns and the gentle expression he wore while watching her with Keth. You are Jake Morrison, she said in heavily accented but clear English. Yes, ma'am, Jake replied. You shielded my offspring with your body. I did what anyone should do when a child is in danger. Zara's eyes widened slightly. Not anyone. My own soldiers did not know Keth was there. But you saw a frightened child and chose to protect it, even though we are enemies. We're not enemies anymore, Jake said simply. Not as long as we're all in this room caring about the same thing. Keth had been listening to the conversation, and now it moved away from its mother to stand between her and Jake. The child took one of Zara's hands and one of Jake's hands, bringing them together. Keth wants us to be friends, Jake said. Zara stared down at their joined hands, green alien skin and pale human skin touching for the first time in peace. In our culture, when someone saves the life of your offspring, it creates a sacred bond. You have earned what we call the Velthera, a debt of honor that can never be repaid. I don't want repayment, Jake said. I just want Keth to be safe and happy. And I want to understand, Zara said, her voice filled with confusion and wonder. How can a species that fights so fiercely in war also show such kindness to an enemy? Child, how can my offspring form such a deep bond with someone from a different world? Jake looked down at Keth, who was smiling up at both of them. Maybe because deep down, we're not so different. Maybe we both care about protecting the innocent and taking care of our families. Perhaps, Zara said thoughtfully. But if that is true, then why are we at war? I don't know, Jake admitted. But maybe we can figure out how to stop fighting. Long enough to find out. Admiral Cole's voice came through the communication system. All parties, please be advised that you have been in contact for 30 minutes. This concludes the initial meeting time. Zara looked at Jake seriously. This cannot end here. There is too much to learn, too much to understand. I agree, Jake said, but it's not up to me. I'm just a soldier. You are more than that, Zara said firmly.
Oh.
You are the bridge between our peoples. You are the one who proved that humans can choose compassion over conquest. Keth said something in Zephyrian, and Zara smiled for the first time since entering the transport. What did it say? Jake asked. My child says that you taught it the human concept of friendship, Zara translated, and that friendship is stronger than fear or hatred. Jake felt his throat tighten with emotion. Keth taught me something too, that family isn't about what species you are, it's about caring for each other. As the meeting ended, and the groups prepared to separate, Jake realized that everything had changed. The war might continue, but now there was something new in the galaxy, proof that two very different species could find common ground in the love they shared for one small child. The news of the Velthera spread through both human and Zephyrian space like wildfire. Admiral Susan Cole found herself in the middle of the biggest diplomatic crisis in human history. Politicians, military leaders, and civilians all had opinions about what Jake Morrison's life debt meant for the future of the war. This is impossible, shouted Senator Robert Clark during an emergency session of the Earth Defense Council. We can't have some random soldier making decisions that affect our entire species. Jake Morrison isn't random, Susan replied calmly. He's the reason we have this opportunity in the first place. Opportunity? Senator Clark's face was red with anger. The Zephyrians have been trying to wipe us out for 3 years. Suddenly we're supposed to trust them because of some alien superstition. It's not superstition to them, said Dr. Alina Rodriguez, the government's expert on alien cultures. The Velthera is one of the most sacred concepts in Zephyrian society. When Zara Velthic declared Jake Morrison under her family's protection, she essentially made him a noble in their culture. Secretary of Defense Linda Hayes leaned forward in her chair. What does that mean practically? It means any attack on Morrison is considered an attack on Zara's family line, Dr. Rodriguez explained. In their culture, that would require blood, vengeance. It also means Zara's clan is honor-bound to protect Morrison and grant him certain privileges. Like what? Susan asked. The right to speak at their councils, the right to request audience with their leaders, the right to propose solutions to conflicts involving his protector's family. Senator Clark shook his head. This is getting out of hand. We need to put a stop to this before it goes any further. Too late for that, Susan said grimly. Zara has already announced the Velthera to her people. According to our intelligence reports, it's causing quite a stir in the Zephyrian Empire. Meanwhile, on the Sovereign's Blade, Zara was dealing with her own political crisis. General Vex Mordok stood before her with 3 other high-ranking military officers, all of them angry about her decision. You have bound our family honor to a human, Vex said, barely controlling his rage. This goes against everything we have fought for. I have honored our traditions, Zara replied firmly. The humans saved my child's life. The Velthera is not a choice. It is a sacred duty. The War Council will not accept this, warned Fleet Commander Vex Haler. They see humans as vermin to be exterminated, not creatures worthy of honor bonds. Then the War Council needs to reconsider their position, Zara said. I have seen proof that humans are capable of nobility and sacrifice. My own child has formed a bond with one of them. General Vex stepped closer to her command throne. Patriarch, with respect, your emotional attachment to your offspring is clouding your judgment. One human's actions do not change the nature of their entire species. Perhaps not, Zara agreed. But it proves that change is possible. If one human can choose compassion over hatred, others might do the same. The debate might have continued. But it was interrupted by an urgent communication from the fleet's intelligence division. Matriarch reported Intelligence Chief Vex Kepler, "We are receiving multiple transmissions from human space. It appears their government is having difficulty accepting the Valthera Declaration." "What kind of difficulty?" Zara asked. "Some of their leaders want to reject it entirely. Others are calling for Jake Morrison to be transferred away from alien contact. There are even suggestions that they should use Morrison as a bargaining chip against us." Zara's eyes blazed with fury. "If they harm the one who saved my child, I will burn their worlds to ash." "Matriarch," Vex said carefully, "this proves my point. Humans cannot be trusted to honor sacred bonds. They see everything as a tool for their own advantage." But Zara was already moving toward the communication station. "Get me a direct line to their Admiral Cole. If humans want to play games with honor, they will learn what that costs them." Back on Earth, Susan Cole received Zara's transmission in her private office. The alien matriarch's image appeared on the secure screen, and Susan could see the anger in those golden eyes. Admiral Cole, Zara said without pleasantries, "I understand. Your people are considering breaking the Valthara bond." "Some people are suggesting various options," Susan said carefully. "Nothing has been decided." "Let me be very clear," Zara continued. "Jake Morrison is now under the protection of my family line. Any harm that comes to him will be considered an act of war against my clan specifically. I will respond with the full force of my fleet." "Are you threatening us?" Susan asked. "I am explaining the consequences of dishonoring a sacred bond," Zara replied. "In our culture, some things are more important than political convenience." Susan studied the alien leader's face.
What exactly do you want from us?"
"I want Jake Morrison to be given the respect he has earned. I want him to be allowed to continue his relationship with my child. And I want him to be part of any future discussions between our peoples." "That's a lot to ask." "It is a small price for the life of my offspring," Zara said firmly. "But there is something else I want to offer in return." "What? A chance to end this war without more bloodshed? Jake Morrison proved that understanding between our species is possible. Let him help us find a path to peace." Susan felt her heart skip a beat. "You're talking about a formal peace process?" "I am talking about the possibility of one," Zara said. "Shh. If your people can accept that not all conflicts must end in total victory, if you can accept that sometimes the greatest strength is knowing when to choose cooperation over conquest." Transmission ended, leaving Susan alone with her thoughts. An hour later, she was back in the council chamber facing the same group of angry politicians and military leaders. "Her position clear," Susan reported. "Morrison stays under their protection, and they want him involved in any peace talks." "Peace talks?" Senator Clark laughed bitterly. "This is exactly what I was afraid of. They think they can dictate terms to us." "Maybe they can," Susan said quietly. "Maybe Morrison's actions have given us something more valuable than any military victory." "What's that supposed to mean?" Clark demanded. "It means we have a chance to end this war without destroying ourselves in the process," Susan replied. "Morrison showed them that humans can be honorable. Now they're offering to show us the same thing." Dr. Rodriguez spoke up. "Intelligence reports support this. Zara Velthic has significant influence in the Zephyrian Empire. If she's genuinely committed to peace, she could bring other clans along with her. And if it's a trap," General Stone asked, "then we'll deal with it," Susan said. "But if it's real, we have a chance to save millions of lives on both sides." The debate continued for hours, but eventually the council reached a decision. Jake Morrison would be given a new assignment as humanity's first official liaison to the Zephyrian Empire. He would work with Zara Velthic to explore the possibility of peace negotiations. When Jake received the news on Kepler Station, he was sitting in the medical bay with Keth. The child had been learning to read English and was slowly working through a children's book about friendship. "They want me to be an ambassador," Jake told Commander Helen Price. "How do you feel about that?" Helen asked. Jake looked down at Keth, who was listening carefully, even though the child didn't understand all the words. Scared, Jake admitted. "I'm just a soldier. I don't know anything about diplomacy or peace treaties." Keth looked up at him and said something in Zephyrian that Jake had learned to recognize. It meant you were brave. Maybe being brave is enough, Jake said. 3 months later, Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of a specially modified transport ship traveling toward the Zephyrian home system. It was the first time in the war that a human vessel had been invited into alien space. Keth stood beside him, wearing a small human uniform that had been specially made for the occasion. The child had become the unofficial mascot of the peace process, a living symbol of what cooperation between the species could achieve. "Are you ready for this?" asked Captain Lisa Weber, who commanded the diplomatic vessel. Jake watched the alien stars grow brighter ahead of them. Somewhere in this system was a world where former enemies were waiting to see if peace was really possible. "I think so," Jake said. "At least I know I'll have help." He felt a small green hand slip into his own. Keth looked up at him with those golden eyes that had started everything, and Jake realized that whatever happened next, he had already accomplished something important. He had proven that sometimes the greatest victories come not from defeating your enemies, but from finding the courage to protect them when they need it most. The transport ship continued toward its destination, carrying with it the hope that two species who had forgotten how to see each other as anything but threats might finally learn to see each other as neighbors among the stars.